young lady just got off the boat from Italy, and how the hell would he ever go to her and say, well, by the way, I'm married, and I have 3 kids, and, by the way, I'd like to marry you. He knew that wouldn't work, so, he just wiped that family out of his mind, and he married my mother. And the first son born to them, my mother and father, was Liberatore. They named him Liberatore, the same as the first son that he had with his original.
To me, that's the weirdest part.
So they named that first son Liberatore. At the age of 18 months, this is my half-brother, at the age of 18 months, that Liberatore acquired spinal meningitis, the same as the first Liberatore, only this one died.
Now, he was your brother,
He was your real
He was my brother.
Full
He was
brother.
my actual full brother, yeah.
Oh, my God.
And of course, I didn't know him, but he had died before I was born. But the irony of it is that his first son, named Liberatore, was stricken with spinal meningitis and didn't kill him, but it left him deaf and mute. The second son that he had, also named Liberatore, same disease, killed him.
Right, but that guy's.
And that's the first son. I came along and he called me Joseph, just like his first
That's
family.
the baby.
Yes.
And my sister came along, named her Ellen, same as the first Helen. So his second, my mother, not knowing that she was the second wife, wound up duplicating the first family that he had in Tarrytown. And then my brother came along and for some reason named him Louis because my mother's brother's named Louis.
Wow.
So in his mind, he was duplicating his first family all over again with my mother. Of course, my mother was in total darkness about any of this. She had absolutely no idea of any of it until 1948, when the first son by now had graduated from school. He had gotten a very good education at St. Joseph's. In fact, he'd gotten a master's degree at Fordham University. He was a very, very well-educated man. He was educated by the nuns. This was a Catholic thing. Very well-educated. And he was working, I think, for the New York Times in one of the departments. And and part of the New York Times was publishing an Italian newspaper called Il Progresso. It was the Italian part of everybody in the Italian community knew Il Progresso. He published an article in that newspaper. This is the first Liberatore, the deaf mute, that he was desperately looking for his father. Hopefully, somebody would read this article. I would like to, meet my father if he's still alive, meet my father and my mother, because he didn't know where his mother was either. He would like to meet his parents, that he didn't want anything from them. He was self-sufficient. He was, well-educated. He was had a good job. He had a family. So all he wants to do is establish this thing with his family. And so a copy of that newspaper wound up with a friend of my parents. They didn't have. He only took the Sunday paper. He didn't take the daily paper. But anyway, this friend told my mother about it. Said, I would like for you to see this article that appeared in the newspaper. If you could stop by sometime, come by the house, and I'd, like to show it to you. So she did. And right there on the front page of the newspaper, this guy, Liberatore Anarone, I'm searching for my father, and there's this picture of Liberatore.
Okay, of him.
Of him.
Not of your father.
No, he didn't know my father. He had no picture of my
Okay,
father.
that's true.
So he had his picture there. My name is Liberatore, and I'm deaf mute, and so on and so forth. Gave the story of his life. And so my mother took that newspaper and took it home and showed it to my father. this is 1948. That was the minute he saw the newspaper, he just about collapsed. He immediately recognized it was his son.
Oh, my God.
And, you know, the cat's out of the bag. And this is after 25 years of marriage and three kids with my mother.
Yeah.
So, you know.
He confessed, I guess.
And I guess he kind of, I think he wanted to go back and try to, you know, reconnect with his son. But I'm sure my mother put the kibosh to that. So, he never responded to this newspaper article. And even though they were 120 miles apart, in 1948, 120 miles was like cross country, you know?
Yeah.
So he never responded to the appeal in the newspaper. So eventually, you know, his son eventually died, and never having seen his father. Then when my father died in 1962, 1962, I went to my mother and I said, you know, Pop is gone, and maybe, you know, we ought to try to see if we can locate this person and let him know that we know who he is, and unfortunately the father is already dead. And she said, well, what good would that do? He's dead, and so there's not much point in getting in touch with him now. So she said no, she didn't want to do that. That was 1962, and that was the end of that. Finally, when my mother died in 1987, now they're both gone.
Right.
I went to my brother and sister and said, look, Pop's gone, Mom's gone. There's an outside chance this guy might still be alive. And so I said, maybe we ought to try to get in touch with his family. And we discussed it. And they said, yeah, if there's any way you can do it, you know, go ahead and try. So back when we didn't have all the internet stuff that we have today in 1987, but I was able to get a listing of the Iannarone names in the United States, the ones that I could get from various records. And I wrote a letter to all the Iannarones that I had names for. And I guess within a week, I had a response from his family, this libertarian.